The Psychology Behind Elizabeth Carmichael by Abigail, Amber, Brittany, and Ellie. Who is Elizabeth Carmichael? Elizabeth Carmichael was born in the year of 1928. She was unconsensually revealed as a transgender woman while facing fraudulent charges. Carmichael possessed many different names throughout her journey. Other than the name Elizabeth Carmichael, she was also known as Geraldine Elizabeth Carmichael, and while living in Texas, she went by the name of Catherine Elizabeth Carmichael. Lastly, prior to her transition, he went by the name Jerry Dean Michael. Before transition, Jerry had married and divorced twice, leaving not only his wives, but also two of his children behind. Carmichael reportedly passed away in the year of 2004.
What did Carmichael do? Well, she created the Dale, quote-unquote created. She had designed a three-wheeled car that claimed to have amazing gas mileage. I believe it was 70 miles per gallon, which is crazy good. And a lot of people ended up wanting to purchase it. So a bunch of people purchased/reserved cars, but she had never actually made a working car. She had just designed it and never was able to actually produce anything. And the money that she obtained was fraudulently obtained, and she fled from authorities. Originally, she was wanted for counterfeiting charges because she was, like previous slides have said, she was a transgender woman who originally was wanted from 1961, and she defrauded an estimate of $1 to $3 million. Applying theories to the criminal. We applied the strain theory to what Carmichael did because it blames certain stressors for being the reason some commit crimes more than others, and at the time, being trans caused a lot of challenges and kind of led to alienation. And she was from a small town, so people talked. Everyone knew, and the feeling of separation from everyone, since it was such a taboo thing at the time, we think that it's possible that these stressors could have been a reason for her to commit the crime more than anyone else at the time.
Next, we'll be looking at the general strain theory according to Merton. In an article by Featherstone, he states that Merton spent most of his time trying to discuss and explain the concept of innovation, which is a response that reportedly occurs when the individual has assimilated the cultural emphasis upon the goal without equally internalizing the institutional norms governing ways and means for its attainment. We believe that Elizabeth Carmichael falls under the definition of the general strain theory according to Merton, and that she falls within the innovator means of adaptation. So Robert Merton states that there is a conflict between institutionalized means and culturally specified goals. Merton believed that there were certain means of adaptation, and Elizabeth Carmichael falls under the inventor means of adaptation, meaning that she was able to create her own invention and go against what society was saying and sell them something, obtain that money, and then go off and do whatever it was that she needed to do with it. While she obtained that money fraudulently, she was still able to innovate and create things of her own. As an innovator, again, Carmichael started the trend of the Dale and was able to get people to buy her car, but she also falls under being a treatise because she fled and changed her identity after the Dale failed to send.
So, why did Carmichael do this? Carmichael had a past before the Dale fraud that featured a series of unsuccessful business endeavors and minor misdemeanors. For example, she counterfeited money, jumped bail and went on a run, and also faked a serious car accident. So she was already in this kind of cycle of criminal behavior. But during this time, there was a petroleum shortage and elevated prices for gas, so she had a great opportunity to build something like the Dale. She tried to modernize the automobile business through the Middle East oil crisis in 1973. So she had this model of the Dale that would be fuel efficient cheap, and bulletproof, as she claimed, but because it never existed, this was all false. So, connecting theories to her crimes. We can connect the labeling theory to her crimes, not necessarily specified to each crime she committed, but more so as to why she kept committing these crimes. The labeling theory definition suggests that self-identity and the behavior of individuals may be determined or influenced by the term used to describe or classify them. Carmichael was charged for desertion for leaving her first wife in 1948, and in this timeline you can see that she was involved in multiple criminal acts. So the theory suggests that she committed these crimes because she was labeled as delinquent or a bad person when she was first charged at 21 years old. Ultimately, this spiraled into a great amount of continuous crimes committed in her lifetime. And in this timeline again, she was charged for desertion for leaving her first wife in 1948, arrested for counterfeiting U.S. currency in 1961, then jumped bail and went on a run a year later in 1962. Also staging a serious car accident to fake her own death in the late 1960s, and was arrested for conspiracy, grand theft, fraud, and counterfeiting from the Dale in 1975. And then some small little petty crimes she was involved in was she changed her identity using stolen records, falsely promoted herself to holding degrees in mechanical engineering and business from Ohio State University and Miami University, to, of course, give herself credibility for creating something like the Dale. And then she also made fake IDs and passed bad checks. This quote says, Michael made fake IDs and passed bad checks, though when Charles was arrested alongside his brother-in-law for those crimes, he said Michael made sure to take the fall. So Michael, who is Elizabeth Carmichael, ultimately would take the fall for Charles, who was the brother of Vivian Barrett Michael, who was Elizabeth Carmichael's wife, before she transitioned. This quote is important because it proves that Carmichael took the blame to being more criminal than Charles, although they both committed the same crime and were involved in the same the same amount. But he did take the fall and made sure he was labeled the criminal and not Charles.
Sexuality in reference to crime. In reference to crime, Carmichael's heritage brings her down a fairly ordinary path. Carmichael grew up in the town of Jasonville, Indiana, and later moved to Detroit, Michigan, with her family leading a seemingly regular childhood. The one thing that stuck out like a sore thumb is the use of sexuality as a defense for her deviant behavior. Jerry Michael, prior to transition, changed his name on the run from the police after being arrested for counterfeit charges and jumping bail. He faked a serious car crash in an effort to shed his identity and become unrecognizable as the infamous Elizabeth Carmichael.
Elizabeth Carmichael was a transgender woman who faced many fraudulent charges within her lifetime. She created the Dale car, which was a 3-wheeled car that claimed to have super amazing gas mileage. People purchased these cars from her, and she was able to form a relationship with them, but fraudulently attained the money. She fell under the general strain theory, according to Merton, and Merton believed that there were these institutionalized means and the culturally specified goals. Carmichael was also an innovator and was able to create her own means in her way of living that were against that of society. So Carmichael had a past before creating the Dale, which led to all these misdemeanors. In conclusion, Carmichael scammed many people throughout her lifetime, but there were many sociological factors that could have led to Carmichael committing the crimes that she did.